Evan Cole's hands shook as he shuffled papers in the cramped courtroom, the clock ticking like a relentless drum behind him. The opposing attorney's voice was sharp, slicing through the quiet like a knife. He swallowed, trying to steady himself. Then, out of nowhere, a cold gust of wind blew across the room, extinguishing the candles near the judge's bench, though the air conditioning had long been off. Papers fluttered as if caught in an invisible storm. "Did you feel that?" Evan whispered, but no one noticed. That's when he saw her. A young woman, translucent and trembling, hovering near the witness stand. Her eyes were wide with panic, scanning the room as though she were trapped. Evan's jaw dropped. Who?" he started, but the words caught in his throat. The ghost's gaze locked on him, pleading silently. Evan's knees weakened. His heart hammered in his chest. He could see her, her unfinished business, her fear. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, convinced he was hallucinating. But she remained, reaching out a pale, shimmering hand. What do you want?" Evan stammered, voice barely audible. She pointed toward the files on the stand, then toward the opposing attorney. Evan's mind raced. He realized she wanted him to help. A stern voice broke through his panic. "Cole, are you prepared to present your evidence or not?" The judge's eyes were sharp, impatient. Evan froze. The ghost looked at him again, desperation in her eyes. He took a shaky breath. "Your Honor, I have new evidence," he said, his voice trembling but loud enough to draw every eye in the room. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The opposing attorney's face twisted into a smirk. "New evidence at this hour? Surely you jest, Mr. Cole." I think it will prove her innocence," Evan replied, his gaze locked on the ghost. She nodded once, subtly, urging him to continue. A door opened behind him, and Vivian Drake walked in like a storm itself, sharp heels clicking, her expression unreadable. The courtroom seemed to shrink under her presence. "Cole," she said, her voice low, carrying authority, "step aside for a moment. We need to discuss this." Evan hesitated, torn between obedience to the court and the ghost pleading silently in front of him. Vivian's eyes softened, not entirely, but enough that he realized she believed him. She led him to the hallway, out of earshot. "You're seeing it too, aren't you?" she asked, almost casually, though there was steel beneath her calm. I don't know what's happening," Evan admitted. She needs help. I can see her, but I don't know how to." Vivian raised a hand, cutting him off. "This isn't some parlor trick. If you're going to work with this, you'll need discipline. Control. And you'll need me." Evan stared at her, shocked. You want to help me help her?" She didn't answer right away. She studied him, her gaze sharp and calculating. Finally, she said, "We're going to take on clients like her. And you're going to learn fast, or you'll fail them." Before he could respond, the ghost's figure appeared at the hallway's entrance, pale and desperate. She pointed again, toward the courthouse files. Evan realized this was no coincidence. She was guiding them. Vivian glanced at him, eyebrow raised. "Looks like our first client has high expectations. Let's see if you can keep up, Cole." The courtroom resumed, and Evan, though terrified, followed Vivian back. She whispered instructions quickly, precise, cutting through his panic. "Present only the facts. Speak with confidence. And do not let anyone intimidate you. Trust what you see." Evan nodded, swallowing hard. He took a deep breath, trying to anchor himself in the reality of the moment, even as his vision flickered with the ghostly presence beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, voice trembling at first, "I have discovered evidence that may exonerate the accused." The ghost hovered near a folder on the stand, glowing faintly. Evan flipped it open, revealing papers no one else could see had been manipulated or rather, guided by her. The proof pointed to the real culprit, a senior associate who had expertly concealed fraudulent transactions. A gasp ran through the courtroom. The opposing attorney froze, suddenly off balance. Vivian's eyes gleamed with approval, cold, calculating, but there was a hint of something else, satisfaction. Evan felt a surge of adrenaline. Your Honor, if I may, these documents confirm the innocence of my client and implicate the true offender. The judge leaned forward, skepticism etched in every line of his face. And who provided this evidence, Mr. Cole? Evan's gaze met the ghost's, and he felt her urgency, her silent plea for recognition. It was discovered with the help of someone no longer among us. Murmurs erupted in the courtroom. Gasps, whispers, incredulous stares. The ghost's light shimmered brighter, almost proud, as if acknowledging Evan's courage. Vivian stepped forward, her presence commanding. The evidence is valid, Your Honor. I vouch for its authenticity. The judge scowled, hesitant. This is highly irregular. Evan gritted his teeth, heart pounding. Sometimes, justice requires seeing what others cannot. A tense silence filled the courtroom. The air felt charged, electric. And in that moment, Evan realized his life had changed forever. He wasn't just a timid lawyer anymore. He had a purpose and a partner who could push him to fulfill it. The ghost hovered, eyes shining, waiting for her story to conclude. Evan knew this was only the beginning, that the courtroom was no longer the only arena he'd fight in. Vivian's smirk, sharp and unyielding, promised trials far beyond this one. He drew a deep breath, steadied his shaking hands, and prepared to take the next step. Evan's hands no longer trembled as he stepped back into the courtroom, though his heart still pounded like a drum. The ghost hovered close, almost urging him forward. Vivian's presence beside him was steady, unflinching, the kind of authority that could silence even the most skeptical jury. Proceed, Mr. Cole, Vivian said, her voice calm but commanding. Focus. Evan took a deep breath. The documents you see here were manipulated to mislead the court, but if examined closely, they reveal the actions of the true culprit. He pointed toward the senior associate, whose confident smirk faltered for the first time. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Witnesses shifted uneasily in their seats. The accused client's hands trembled as relief washed over her face. The ghost hovered just behind her, faintly glowing, like a beacon of truth. The opposing attorney slammed his briefcase on the table. This is preposterous. You claim, what? That a spirit guided evidence to you? Evan's throat went dry, but Vivian cut in sharply. This isn't about spirits. The evidence speaks for itself. The paper trail cannot be refuted. Her voice was sharp, precise, leaving no room for argument. Evan felt a spark of confidence ignite. He flipped through the files, letting the ghost subtly nudge him to the right pieces of evidence. Notice the inconsistencies here, and here. The transactions were altered to point blame elsewhere. The person responsible is in this room. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Mr. Cole, you realize that claiming assistance from someone deceased is highly irregular. Yes, Your Honor, Evan admitted, voice steady now. But the facts are undeniable. The trail of evidence proves the innocence of my client and exposes the true offender. Vivian's gaze met his briefly. A subtle nod. He could feel her approval, though it was buried beneath layers of her usual icy exterior. The senior associate's face twisted in panic. This is absurd. I demand this be dismissed. Silence, the judge barked. I will review the documents. This court will not tolerate interruptions. He picked up the files, scanning them meticulously. The room held its breath. Every eye was on the judge, on the ghostly glow behind the accused, on Evan, whose newfound courage was palpable. Minutes stretched like hours. Evan's stomach twisted with tension, but he didn't look away. The ghost's presence was reassuring, a quiet force urging him forward. He glanced at Vivian, who gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. That tiny gesture was enough. Finally, the judge set the documents down. The evidence appears compelling. This court finds the accused not guilty. Relief erupted across the room. The client's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She whispered a thank you, barely audible, to Evan. The ghost's glow brightened, then slowly dimmed. She turned to Evan, eyes filled with gratitude, and then, just like that, she vanished. The courtroom felt colder, quieter, but lighter somehow. Evan swallowed the lump in his throat. Outside the courthouse, Vivian waited, arms crossed, staring at the street as if nothing had happened. Evan approached her, tentative. Did we really just do that? Vivian's sharp gaze finally softened. Yes. But don't let this fool you. What you just did, helping someone who can't speak for themselves, it's only the beginning. There will be more. Harder cases. Darker truths. Evan nodded slowly. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep sense of responsibility. I think I'm ready. Vivian studied him, lips pressing into a thin line. You will be, or you'll fail them. But for now, she paused, almost as if weighing her words. You've passed your first test. As they walked down the steps together, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that the city itself had changed. There was a new layer to reality, one he could see, feel, and interact with. Ghosts weren't just echoes, they were voices with unfinished stories, and he now had the power to help them. That night, in their shared office, Vivian organized the files with meticulous precision while Evan sat quietly, still processing everything. A soft knock came at the door. Evan looked up to see another faint glow, a new ghost, flickering in and out of view. This one was older, with a stern expression and eyes that seemed to pierce through him. Vivian didn't flinch. Looks like our second client has arrived early, she said, almost casually. Cole, get ready. This one's not going to be easy. Evan felt a mixture of fear and excitement. He had survived his first supernatural trial, but the city was full of secrets, lies, and unfinished business waiting to be uncovered. And now he wasn't alone. Vivian Drake, the elite attorney who seemed incapable of warmth, was by his side. The ghost floated forward, her eyes locked on Evan. She pointed to a stack of old case files on Vivian's desk. Evan stepped closer, heart racing. What do you need me to do? Vivian's gaze was intense, sharp as a blade. Listen, observe, and speak only when necessary. Trust me to handle the legal part, but understand this, Cole, sometimes the dead are more dangerous than the living. Evan nodded. The first lesson was clear. Courage alone wouldn't be enough. Strategy, precision, and empathy were just as critical when dealing with souls who could not rest. The ghost's expression shifted, a hint of desperation mixed with hope. Evan felt the weight of her story, the urgency of her unfinished business. He could sense that this case would demand more from him than the last. Vivian leaned back, fingers steepled. Time to prove you can handle more than fear. Evan took a deep breath, heart racing. He felt alive in a way he never had before. The timid lawyer from yesterday was gone. In his place stood someone ready to confront truths most people couldn't even imagine, living or dead. Outside, the city lights flickered. Somewhere in the night, another soul cried out for help, and Evan knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Evan arrived at the office earlier than usual, his nerves buzzing with anticipation. Vivian was already there, seated at her immaculate desk, reviewing files with clinical precision. The glow of the early sunlight caught the sharp angles of her face, making her look untouchable, as if no fear or doubt could ever reach her. Good, she said without looking up. You're on time. That counts for something. Before Evan could respond, the office door creaked, and a new ghost appeared. This one was different. Older, dressed in formal attire from decades past, his eyes carrying a weight of betrayal and anger. He floated just above the floor, shifting uneasily, radiating tension. He's angry, Evan said, taking a cautious step forward. Vivian raised an eyebrow. And that's the good part? Cole, stay calm. Let him speak first. The ghost's voice was a whisper, carried on the edges of the room. Find the truth, they lied, they stole everything from me. Evan glanced at Vivian. He's accusing someone. He wants justice. Vivian nodded, her expression unreadable. Then we find it. But remember, anger clouds judgment. You'll need to listen carefully. They began combing through old case files, photographs, and newspaper clippings from decades ago. The ghost floated near Evan, occasionally tugging him toward documents, pointing at details only he could see. Pieces of a long-forgotten embezzlement case emerged, threads that had been buried under years of bureaucracy and lies. This is more than just a legal case, Evan murmured. Someone went to great lengths to hide this. And it's dangerous. Vivian's gaze hardened. Danger is part of the job, Cole. You'll learn to separate fear from focus. Or you'll fail both the living and the dead. Hours passed as they pieced together the evidence. The ghost grew restless, his frustration palpable. Each new revelation seemed to hit him harder, shaking him with grief and rage. Evan felt the intensity of it, a heavy burden that threatened to crush him. Finally, they had a breakthrough. A ledger buried in the archives contained the missing pieces, signatures, dates, and accounts manipulated to cover the theft. The ghost hovered over it, his eyes blazing, pointing repeatedly. Vivian studied the ledger, nodding slowly. We have enough to confront the living parties involved. This won't be easy. They've got influence, connections, and they won't give up without a fight. Evan swallowed, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. And if we fail? Vivian's eyes met his, unflinching. Then the dead remain trapped, and the truth dies with them. That's failure I won't accept. Do you understand? Yes, Evan said, voice firm. He felt a surge of resolve, stronger than any fear he'd felt before. That evening, they entered a sleek, modern office downtown. The air smelled of polished wood and ambition. The living parties, the heirs of the embezzlers, sat across the table, confident, smug. They didn't know what was coming. Evan stepped forward. We have evidence that proves your actions have caused harm and concealed the truth. The ledger confirms it. The older man at the table laughed, a low, cruel sound. And who exactly is your witness? Another ghost story? Evan's pulse quickened. The ghost appeared, spectral and imposing, behind the table. His presence made the air thicken, his eyes fixed on the men who had wronged him. Vivian's tone cut sharply through the room. This isn't about belief. It's about facts. And the facts are here. She laid the ledger on the table, the edges catching the light like a blade. The men paled as they skimmed the entries. Every forged signature, every manipulated transaction, it was undeniable. Evan took a step closer to the ghost. You have a right to speak, to be heard. The ghost's voice, now louder and commanding, filled the room. I trusted you. You stole everything. I want justice. Vivian leaned forward, calm and precise. Then listen carefully. The law will make it right, but only if we proceed methodically. Your anger can guide us, but not control us. Minutes stretched. Tension gripped the room. The men at the table shifted uncomfortably, sweat glistening on their foreheads. Evan felt the energy in the room crackling, the living and the dead confronting each other in an invisible battle. Finally, the heirs reluctantly acknowledged the evidence, their defiance crumbling. Legal measures were set into motion. The ghost's rage softened, relief washing over him. He looked at Evan, eyes filled with gratitude and peace, before fading slowly, leaving behind a quiet stillness in the office. Evan exhaled, exhausted but triumphant. Vivian observed him carefully. Not bad for a first real test. You're learning fast, Cole. Evan looked down at the ledger, realizing the depth of what they'd just accomplished. Helping the dead wasn't just about solving puzzles, it was about courage, empathy, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. As they left the office, Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a shadow crossing her face. Looks like we've got a situation in the East District. A new client. Young, desperate, and dangerous. This one will test both of you in ways you haven't imagined. Evan felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. He nodded. I'm ready. Vivian's smirk was almost imperceptible. Good. You'll need that courage. The dead don't forgive mistakes easily. Outside, the city lights flickered against the night sky. Somewhere, another spirit waited, its story untold. And Evan knew the path ahead would be harder, darker, but he wouldn't face it alone. He glanced at Vivian, their partnership solidifying with unspoken trust. The timid lawyer of yesterday was gone. In his place stood someone who could navigate the living and the dead, someone ready to confront truths buried by time, fear, and deception. The city pulsed around them, alive with secrets, whispers, and ghosts. And Evan knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Evan and Vivian arrived at their office to find a faint, flickering light near the door. A young woman stood there, her translucent form shivering with fear and urgency. Her eyes were wide, darting nervously from one corner of the room to the other. Evan stepped forward cautiously. "Hi. I'm Evan. How can we help you?" Vivian's gaze was sharp, assessing the spirit with the same precision she applied to any living client. "Speak clearly. We need facts, not feelings. What's your unfinished business?" The ghost hesitated, then whispered, They took my voice. They made it so no one believed me. I need justice." Evan felt a chill run down his spine. There was desperation in her tone, a vulnerability that tugged at his heart. "We'll help you," he said firmly, though he could feel the enormity of the task pressing down on him. Vivian nodded. "We will. But this one won't be simple. Cole, I want you to pay attention. The law can't always reach the dead, but we can." They spent hours gathering old testimonies, letters, and court records. The ghost led Evan to crucial details he could never have found on his own: a hidden contract, a manipulated recording, and a ledger showing a cover-up spanning years. Each revelation deepened the mystery and tightened the noose around the living culprit, a powerful businesswoman whose influence extended into the courts. "This is dangerous," Evan muttered, holding the ledger. "If we confront her directly, she could ruin us, Vivian." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Then we do it smartly. Carefully. And we win. Or the ghost remains trapped, and the truth dies with her." That evening, they arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a small conference room where the evidence could be laid out without interference. The businesswoman entered, her confidence bordering on arrogance, unaware of the forces aligned against her. Evan presented the facts, voice steady but firm. "We have undeniable proof of your actions, manipulated evidence, silenced witnesses, and deliberate concealment of the truth. You cannot escape responsibility." The woman laughed lightly, trying to dismiss them, but the ghost appeared behind Evan, her eyes glowing fiercely. The room's air grew heavy, charged with the presence of the unseen. Papers fluttered, a soft whisper carried through the room, and even the woman's composed demeanor faltered. Vivian stepped forward, unwavering. "This isn't conjecture. The ledger, the documents, and corroborating witnesses confirm it. You've had a chance to make amends. Now the truth will be recognized, whether you like it or not." The woman's face drained of color. Panic flickered in her eyes as the weight of exposure pressed down on her. Evan felt a surge of determination. Justice isn't about fear, it's about righting what's wrong. Your choices have consequences, and today, the truth wins. A tense silence fell. Then, the woman's defenses cracked. She reluctantly signed an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and agreed to restitution. The ghost's form glimmered brighter, a serene smile crossing her face. Vivian exhaled, a rare moment of satisfaction crossing her features. "Well done, Cole. You kept your focus. You didn't falter under pressure." Evan felt a rush of relief, pride, and exhaustion. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and the supernatural and emerged capable of action, empathy, and courage. The ghost hovered for a moment, looking at Evan with gratitude, before fading gently into the air. "Thank you," her voice a soft echo that lingered. Evan turned to Vivian. I couldn't have done this without you." Vivian's icy exterior softened slightly, though only for a heartbeat. "You did it because you were willing to listen and act. Courage matters more than fear." Outside the office, night had fallen. The city lights twinkled, but Evan knew the streets were filled with unseen stories, hidden truths, and souls waiting for resolution. He had stepped into a world few could see, a world where law and the supernatural intersected. And he was ready. Vivian placed a hand on the doorframe, looking out into the city. "Cole, prepare yourself. The next one won't be easy. Some clients, they aren't just lost, they're dangerous. And sometimes, the living will fight you harder than the dead ever could." Evan's chest tightened, anticipation and adrenaline mingling. "I understand. I'm ready." Vivian smirked faintly, sharp and calculating, yet tinged with approval. "Good. Because the city doesn't rest and neither will they. Evan took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the world around him, both seen and unseen. The timid lawyer he once was had vanished, replaced by someone capable of navigating the living and the dead, uncovering truths, and standing firm when confronted with fear, deception, and the supernatural. He turned to Vivian. "Let's see what's next." Vivian's smirk deepened. "Always forward, Cole. Always forward." As they stepped into the night, Evan felt alive in a way he never had before. The city held countless stories, secrets buried beneath layers of lies and silence. And now, with the cold, elite attorney by his side, he was ready to confront them all. For those watching, remember to subscribe for more thrilling supernatural adventures, hit the like button if you love ghostly mysteries, and comment below what would you do if a spirit sought your help.